Hi, everyone. I'm Elaine Quijano. It's good to be with you. Thanks for joining us. The process to confirm Judge Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court kicked off Monday. Lawmakers on the Senate Judiciary Committee and Barrett herself delivered their opening statements. Republicans are pushing to put Barrett on the bench by Election Day. Democrats, on the other hand, insist the seat left vacant by the late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg should be filled after the election, which is nearly 3 weeks away. But Democrats are also focusing on another date. It's the one a week after the election, when the Supreme Court is set to hear arguments on the Trump administration's challenge to the Affordable Care Act. Democratic lawmakers argue that millions of Americans will lose their health care if Barrett is confirmed to the Supreme Court. The topic of health care is also dominating the race for the White House. President Trump returned to the campaign trail Monday with a rally in Florida. It's his first trip since testing positive for the coronavirus nearly 2 weeks ago. Over the course of the last week, doctors refused to answer when the president last tested positive for the virus. But on Monday, the White House physician announced that Mr. Trump tested negative. The president's handling of his own COVID-19 diagnosis appears to be negatively impacting his support in several states he'll need to win in order to stay in the White House. Our latest CBS News Battleground tracker found that most voters in Michigan, Nevada, and Iowa feel he set a bad example for the nation during his recent illness. We'll have much more on that in a few minutes. But first, we begin on Capitol Hill with CBS News Chief Congressional Correspondent Nancy Cordes.
As demonstrators flocked to the Supreme Court steps,
you solemnly swear that
Judge Amy Coney Barrett laid out her conservative philosophy.
Courts are not designed to solve every problem or right every wrong in our public life.
It's the timing that makes this nomination a political powder keg, with Americans already voting in nearly 40 states.
I think this hearing is a sham.
there's nothing unconstitutional about this process.
Republicans defended Barrett's membership in a small Catholic group called People of Praise.
Your political opponents want to paint you as is a TV or cartoon version of a religious radical.
Democrats didn't focus on her faith, highlighting instead constituents who they said could lose their health care coverage if Barrett joins the court.
Kenny is a real person whose life depends on the Affordable Care Act.
They pointed to Barrett's comments from 2017 when she argued that Chief Justice John Roberts had pushed Obamacare beyond its plausible meaning in order to save it.
The ways in which you may serve as a justice will do irreparable harm.
That's outrageous. As a mother of 7, Judge Barrett clearly understands the importance of health care.
With coronavirus stalking the Senate, Utah's Mike Lee recovered in time to make it back.
Feel great.
Going maskless while speaking, like his colleagues. Several others appeared remotely due to exposure or, like Democratic VP nominee Kamala Harris, as a precaution.
This hearing has brought together more than 50 people to sit inside of a closed-door room for hours while our nation is facing a deadly airborne virus.
And Nancy Cordes joins me now from Capitol Hill. Hi, Nancy. Senators are going to spend the next 2 days questioning Judge Barrett. What can we expect?
Well, Elaine, these hearings are going to be part endurance test because on Tuesday, each senator on the Judiciary Committee, there are 22 of them, will get half an hour to grill her about anything he or she wants. So she'll get thrown questions about the Affordable Care Act. She'll be asked about abortion. She'll be asked about President Trump. She'll be asked about the election, whether she's willing to recuse herself from cases that could come before the court just a couple of weeks after she's confirmed, if that is in fact what happens. And so, there are a lot of questions that could trip up a typical nominee. But Amy Coney Barrett is someone who has been to this rodeo before. She testified before the same committee back in 2017 when she was being confirmed for the Federal Appeals Court. So she does have some experience, and I'm sure she has done her homework and she knows what kinds of pitfalls to avoid.
Yeah. Well, Nancy, let's talk about the timeline ahead. There are 22 days until Election Day, and a week after that, the Supreme Court is set to hear a case on the Affordable Care Act. Do Senate Republicans feel that Judge Barrett's confirmation process will be completed by then?
They do. In fact, Senate Republicans are really hoping that they can confirm her about a week before Election Day. So barring any unforeseen obstacles, that is exactly what's going to happen. In fact, you heard some Democrats in the first day of hearings say point blank there really isn't anything procedurally that they can do to stop this nomination. And so instead what they're trying to do is really turn this into a messaging opportunity in advance of the election, really highlighting health care, Obamacare. So they will be pushing her to explain what would happen to the millions of people who would lose insurance if the Supreme Court were to strike down the Affordable Care Act. And they really believe that this is a winning case to make because, after all, health care was the #1 issue in the midterm elections back in 2018. Democrats retook control of the House, and they think it is going to be a very important issue in 2020 as well. Republicans, for their part, argued that there's no sign that Amy Coney Barrett is necessarily going to be involved in striking down the Affordable Care Act. But Democrats pointed to some comments that she made in 2017 when she basically argued that the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court went too far to save the law, implying that she herself would have done something very different.
Well, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer said Democrats will not supply the quorum when a vote occurs in the committee or on the floor. What does that mean, Nancy? And for how long can Democrats actually delay the confirmation process?
What that basically means is that Democrats are threatening to potentially not show up when it comes time to vote. And so Republicans would need all of their members present. You couldn't have anybody isolating due to coronavirus in order to get her past each successive threshold. Now, they're going to need all of their members there anyway, because this is going to be a real squeaker of a vote no matter what. You've got 53 Republicans in the Senate. 2 of them have sent signals that they're probably not going to vote to confirm her. So you need every other Republican to be there for the vote anyway. But basically what Democrats are saying is that they'll do whatever they can, since they can't outright stop the nomination. They'll do what they can to keep it from being as easy as it could be for Republicans.
Well, Senator Kamala Harris is a member of the Judiciary Committee. She's, of course, also the Democratic nominee for vice president. How did she use her time during Monday's hearing to highlight some of the key issues for Democrats and the Biden campaign?
She talked, as a number of Democrats did, about the stakes that are involved here, not just about the Affordable Care Act, though she spoke a lot about that, but also a woman's right to choose and a whole host of other issues. The election, the impending election, because the Supreme Court could end up having to rule on a case involving a contested election result in one state or another, and that's obviously something that would directly affect Kamala Harris. Democrats have been arguing that Coney Barrett should recuse herself from any election cases that might involve President Trump, the man who has just nominated her to sit on the court. But what Republicans have told me repeatedly is that they don't believe there's any reason to recuse herself. They say, Sonia Sotomayor, Elaine Quijano, they never had to recuse themselves from cases that involved President Obama, the man who nominated them, and they don't think that Amy Coney Barrett should be any different. But she's sure to get a lot of questions about that.
Well, I also want to ask you about coronavirus relief legislation. Where do negotiations currently stand, and how does the confirmation hearing impact how quickly lawmakers move forward on a stimulus package?
Well, certainly the confirmation process is front and center for the Republicans who control the Senate. That is their #1 priority. But even beyond that, there are big stumbling blocks for this coronavirus negotiation, even as House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin close in on a number that they can both live with, probably somewhere around $1.82 trillion. The problem is that Senate Republicans say they can't live with a number anywhere near that high, and they have really argued from the very beginning that the government has already spent enough, that they don't want to add to the debt, and that they would be betraying their their conservative principles by supporting another stimulus bill that is that large. They've made no secret of that. So given those dynamics, even though there are some Senate Republicans running for re-election who would love to be able to show their voters from purple states that they've done something for them this big right before Election Day, by and large, their Republican colleagues are not sold. And that means that Senate Leader Mitch McConnell, even if there is a deal, is likely to tap the brakes. He's not going to force Senate Republicans to vote for something that many of them, probably more than half of them, don't support.
Much to the disappointment of millions of Americans who are looking to Washington for some kind of help right now. All right, Nancy Cordes for us. Nancy, thank you.
You're welcome, Elaine.